You're checking in with the doctor for the greatest fantasy baseball podcast in the world, starring your hosts, Dr. Fantasy.
I'm ready to rock and roll today.
And Rydawg.
Harrison Masturbator.
Welcome to Doc and Dog, your fantasy baseball geniuses, presented by the Fantasyholics.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Doc and Dog, and this is a Fantasyholics baseball podcast. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I'm here with my co-host Rydawg. Rydawg, what's happening today?
What's going on, Doc? How are you doing?
Not too bad, and we were saying before that this is the first time we've recorded during the day, so I get to see your luscious locks in the daylight, so I'm looking forward to it. Keeps me motivated.
Me too.
So we are in the middle of our team mini-series. We are previewing each and every MLB roster, going over the fantasy impact of their lineup, rotation, bullpen, the whole 9 yards. So today we are talking about the San Diego Padres. I know there's a particular gentleman that you are interested in discussing, so I will not delay any further, and we will jump right into it, starting with their lineup. Mr. Fernando Tatis Jr. is going to be playing shortstop for him this year, and I will let you kick it off.
Oh, man, I get the honors.
It's all you.
There's everything to like about Tatis. And maybe in redraft, his price tag's a little high. But if you're starting a keeper or even a dynasty league, he's going top 10, top 15. In a redraft, I may hold off. But if it's a dynasty or a keeper league, I'm all for it. I mean, the kid's super young, and he's got all the ability in the world to be an absolute stud in a 5-category league. He does it all. I could see a potential 30-30 year for him maybe this year, and then in the future, possibly a 40-40, depending how much he progresses with his power. But there's everything to like about him, and he just goes out there and plays. And health is always a concern with him, but if he's healthy, you should definitely have a 30-30 year.
Yeah, and I agree with that. He currently is going 16th overall in redraft leagues, and I would say I think that's a little steep. We've talked about it in previous episodes. Shortstop is very, very deep this year, so I like to try to grab a mid-round guy that offers some upside. You know, I'd even take Bichette, who goes approximately 50, 60 picks later, and I think he has a ton of upside as well. So Tatis, though, he's one of those guys that I hear a ton of argument over him, and we've had some Tatis debates in some of our group chats, but the talent is there, and the biggest argument people have against him is his batting average for balls that are hit in play. It was very high last year. Some people point to that being luck, but the fact of the matter it usually takes about 800 at-bats before that average starts to level off. So the fact of the matter is he might be so talented that his batting average on balls in play might just be higher than average because he's that talented. So I don't think you can really judge that yet with a player that young. So that's the biggest argument that I hear against him. You look at the advanced metrics, people say, oh, he's lucky. You don't know yet. He's still young enough in his career. You don't know if he's lucky or good. So I think personally that he's just that good, and I think we'll continue to see that. And I agree, he has 30-30 upside. I do think that price tag is high. I wouldn't take him. If he starts to fall into more of the third round, I would probably take a harder look at it, but going with one of the first picks in the second, I think, is a little steep for me.
It is, I agree. And, I mean, this is going to be the guy that, if you're in a dynasty league, he's the guy you want to build your team around. He just has so much contact ability that, like, every ball he hits just happens to be in play. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't see him hitting what did he have last year, like a 330 batting average or something like that?
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Even if he hits 280, though, and he 30-30, take that all day.
280, possibly 290. I mean, he just hits the ball. He always makes contact. And he's very fun to watch, and I like the rest of this lineup, too. So we'll see what happens. 16th is, like you said, it's a little steep, especially with how deep shortstop is. But if you're doing a startup dynasty, I'd pay the price tag because you know what you're getting for in the future.
For sure. And then right behind him in their outfield is Tommy Pham. He currently is going approximately the 80th pick overall. I like Pham. He's a 2020 guy. He'll get you points for multiple categories. And I think a lot of times people are chasing those high steal, high average, high, 2020 kind of guys. So I think that kind of inflates his value a little bit just because he steals bases. I'd rather take a chance on Laureano a little later. I think Robles at the same value will get you more steals if you're looking to go that direction. So I think that maybe I'd take him around pick 100 or so is where I have him in my rankings. But I think it's fair for him, but I do think it's a little inflated because of his season last year.
I agree. Let me ask you something. Where does Ozuna rank? Because we talked about like the outfielders that, it's just a preference point with the 80 to 92, 100 overall rank outfielders. I mean, Pham's decent, but like you want to go for upside, which a guy like Robles offers, or even a guy like Benintendi who had a very bad year. But I mean, he's shown in the past that he is a very, very talented player. So
I know Benintendi is going almost 30 picks later.
Exactly. So you know what you're getting out of it just based off upside. But Pham has always had the potential, but he just hasn't seemed to reach it. And outfield's always deep, so I would look later. Like you said, around pick 100, if he's there, maybe. But I'd take Robles or Benintendi or someone before him.
Yeah, I agree. Right behind him is Manny Machado, batting third, playing third for him, and he's going approximately pick 58 right now. So I always like Manny Machado. I think he has all the ability in the world. And 2 years ago, I mean, he was a consensus first-round pick. So he has that ability to put up numbers that are bigger than his ADP. I know a lot of people will say that that's kind of a reach for him around pick 58. I don't think third base is overly deep. If you want to argue that you want to take Josh Donaldson 20 to 30 picks later, I really can't argue with you. But Manny Machado still has elite exit velocity. He doesn't steal a ton of bases, right around 10, but he just has so much talent. And he's one of those guys to me that has so much upside. And if you can get a first-round caliber player in round 6 or 7, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't either. Machado is a guy. And I think the reason for being how much potential he had in his ceiling. I mean, he was hitting 30 dingers in Baltimore, which is another example of how we said in previous podcasts of how players affect when they play in Baltimore as opposed to different stadiums. And Machado is he's a hell of a baseball player. Pick 56, I'm taking him. It's not a reach. It's also not a steal. I think that's exactly where his talent is. He's a top 5 to 8 third baseman in that category. So, I mean, I'd take him all day long at that rate. And like you said, he was a consensus first-round pick 2 years ago. I just think the contract got to him a little bit his first year. And I think as he plays through it, I think he's going to start to get improved.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And we'll move on to the next one behind him. Batting fourth for them is Eric Hosmer, playing first. He currently is going pick 239, so a lower-end first baseman. I actually like him in that spot. I think that he has the chance to drive in a lot of runs, obviously with Tatis, Pham, and Machado ahead of him. He had 99 RBIs last year, so would I feel confident with him as my first baseman? Not necessarily, but I don't have a problem if you take some bigger upside guys earlier in the draft and you throw Hosmer in there as a guy that'll get you a ton of RBIs. It once again depends on how your draft goes earlier. If you're kind of starving for RBIs, I think it's good value. But, I mean, overall, for a guy that had 99 RBIs, going pick 239 is good value.
I mean, I agree. I like Hosmer a lot, actually. I mean, he has Pham, Machado, and Tatis in front of him, like you said. There's nothing to not like about him, but 99 RBIs, and he's going in most leagues. Pick 239 would be undrafted.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable having him as my first baseman, like you said. But I mean, I also wouldn't feel like I wouldn't feel too bad about it, especially if you can get deeper and more depth in like pitching. And then first baseman there's always a couple first basemen that really start off the year hot, like Josh Bell did, and I'm pretty sure he went almost around the same value last year around this time, if I'm not mistaken. So if you could take the chance, I would. I mean, I'd take him, and then I would just like leave him there at first. I'd have, I'd build my strong depth around other positions.
Yeah, and that's why I agree. Josh Bell is going around pick 100 this year, so Hosmer goes 140 picks almost after him. So I wouldn't mind taking, like you said, some quality pitching in that mid-round range, waiting on a first, because at that point you're really throwing a dart at a first baseman. So if you want to wait till your last few picks to take your starting first baseman, I think Hosmer is worth it.
I agree. And I mean, 99 RBIs and a guy going almost undrafted, that's pretty good. I mean, and I'd take that value any day, and I'd even start him.
Yeah, I would as well. Moving on, behind him, batting fifth in the outfield for them is Trent Grisham. He's actually one of my favorite sleepers this year. He's going around pick 262 right now. So pretty much undrafted. I mean, if he is being drafted, he's in the last round, but he's a guy in the minors that always had a ton of speed. When you look at his advanced metrics, his sprint speed is one of the top 20 in all of baseball. He has a bit of power potential, not huge upside, but around 20. And the reason I love him, you have the ability to get a 20-20 guy with one of your last picks, good average, good lineup. I just love the value for a guy like that. And, when we're talking about looking for guys that have high upside with steals, taking them in the last round is a great value.
I agree. And he was one of the most under the radar scouted guys for that farm system a couple of years ago. So Grisham's a solid guy. He's a solid outfielder. People underestimate his offense just because of how great he plays defense. But he's really, really quick, like you said. He reminds me a little bit of like Trey Turner's speed. So if he can get the at-bats and if he can stay in the lineup and prove himself, I could see potentially 30 steals in the next 2 years if he can get those ABs.
Yeah, I agree. Behind him, batting sixth for him is Jurickson Profar, playing second base. And you had a note on here, former first overall prospect in 2012. That seems like yesterday. I remember when he was with the Rangers and he was supposed to be, I equate it a little bit to the way that people talk about Wander Franco right now. He was that level, though. People said Profar is the next coming and the next greatest thing. And that's why I always like to pump the brakes on guys until they get to AA and above. But, it seems like just yesterday, Profar was the top prospect in all of baseball.
It's crazy to really think that. That was 8 years ago. And when I put that note, I was like, holy shit, this guy still has a job? Yeah. So you can really just leave your name base, right? Guy like Jurickson Profar, who we haven't seen and even close to reach his potential. The fact that he got drafted in the first overall, that's the reason he still has a job. So he made his name in college, and he's still bouncing around team to team. I believe he was with Oakland last year, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's insane, and I'm not drafting him. I mean, and you're right. It just goes to show how highly people really take first overall picks. A guy like Wander Franco, Lord knows if he's gonna turn out to be a Profar. Is he going to live up to it? That's the thing. I'd rather be a low scouted prospect. A guy like even Soto was a low scouted prospect. And now look at him. So you have all that weight on your shoulders, and it's hard to live up to it. Just look at what Dansby Swanson's doing. I mean, he's not as bad as Profar, but he didn't live up to his first overall pick name either. It's a lot. It's a lot of pressure, and most people can't do it.
Yeah, and I agree that I don't think he's really fantasy relevant. He's going pick 244 right now, so undrafted for the most part. But interesting enough, pick 244, but he is owned in 70% of Yahoo leagues right now. So people are still drafting him. He's not a free agent in every single league. When I looked at his advanced metrics a little more, there's really nothing to like either. So people are drafting him just based on the name. His exit velocity, his hard hit percentage, he just wasn't making great contact with the ball. And, people still hang on to the hope and the dream that he'll live up to what he once was and say, oh, man, that was my last round pick and I won a championship. No, I mean, that's not going to happen. I'll put my name on the line and say that will not happen.
I would too. And that's the thing. Oh, there's people in over half of Yahoo leagues that actually think this guy still has a chance. I'm not hating on the guy, but I mean, he's not a guy I'm going to risk a sleeper pick on, I guess. I mean, if he's there, he's there. I mean, I'm just not going to be like, yes, man, I got Jurickson Profar. I'm going to win the championship. No, that's not how the outcome's going to turn out.
He's not one of your boys.
He couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. So that's where I see him.
Then we get to the bottom of the lineup here. Batting seventh right now, they have Francisco Mejia, their catcher, listed. Number 8, they have one of their other outfielders, Franchy Cordero, listed as the starter. Will Myers is also probably their first guy off of the bench. Probably will play the matchups with him and Franchy Cordero, or Will Myers will most likely get more of the at-bats there. I don't have a ton of notes on either of them. Mejia is kind of buried in that lineup. If he was to move up, maybe ahead of Profar to hit behind Grisham or Hosmer, or one of those guys that could score more runs, I think from the catcher position he may have a bit of potential. But he's more of a defensive specialist. Same with Franchy Cordero, nothing fantasy relevant. Will Myers is another one of those names that's always, I guess, intriguing to people. He used to be a huge prospect back in the day. He's going pick 242 right now. So once again, I didn't look at his own ownership percentage, but it's probably higher than it should be based off of the name. He's at a point in his career where he's not really relevant anymore, and unless he was able to go towards the top of that lineup, bat in the heart of it. But if he's in the bottom of that lineup, he doesn't have much upside. So not really a lot of notes for me on the bottom half here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Those guys aren't going to move up in the lineup. Maybe if they take Profar's spot, but they're not going to get – I think the 1 and 4 spots are locked in that lineup personally. And it should be. I mean, Hosmer's earned his role in that lineup. So is Tatis, Machado. I mean, I guess Pham has too. I like Mejia a lot, actually. That's the one guy, I guess, that would pop out just because he was a top-rated prospect catcher back in the day. Mm-hmm. He was the best catching prospect, 3 or 4 years ago. But here's where we are now. So not much to talk.
Yeah, I mean, especially at a position that's not very deep. I mean, I don't have a problem if you roll with Mejia. I think he's going right around like the 15th catcher overall. So really right in the middle there, a higher end second catcher if you're in a 2-catcher league.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather take it with I've said his name a bunch of times, and we'll talk about him eventually. I would take a Will Smith over him just because, I mean, he's probably going later too, and he's shown potential and he's shown what he can do with limited at-bats. So I'm not going to take Mejia. I took him a couple times last year and 2 years ago, so I think that ship's sailed for me.
Yep, I would agree. So we will move over to the rotation now. Got a few interesting names in the Padres rotation, and which feels weird to say, but they have an intriguing rotation. Their ace is Chris Paddock. He's going right around the 52nd overall pick right now. 13th overall pitcher off the board, which I thought was interesting. Paddock had a really good season last year, a fantastic K rate. He pitches in a good ballpark there with Petco. And I think he has a ton of upside. And I actually wrote an article on him that'll be coming out this week. But one of the reasons I really like him is with a shortened season, he was going to have an innings limit. But now, most likely when the season starts, he's going to have the opportunity to pitch the entire season. So you're really not losing any value there. In that 50 spot, that's really where a lot of those younger, high upside pitchers are going. Castillo, Giolito. So I don't have a problem because there is some risk because they are younger, but I think the reward can be really high on guys like that.
I agree. And, Paddock is definitely a guy that seems to he's a guy that I would trust as my number 1 pitcher personally. He's shown a lot of promise last year. His K rate's phenomenal, and his control of his command is definitely great. And like you say, he pitches in a great ballpark. So there's no reason to really not take him as your 13th overall pitcher, or even maybe reach on him a round or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't even mention that. That's a good point, though. His control is absolutely impeccable. I think he's only 24 right now, and we talked about your boy Soroka before and his control. Paddock is Soroka if he had K upside. So I will take Paddock all day.
I guess I would have to take Paddock over Soroka, too, but
I hope
I wouldn't sleep on it.
Behind him right now, I thought this was kind of interesting, but they have Garrett Richards listed as their second starter right now. He's going pick 258. He's a guy, I remember he had some decent seasons with the Angels. He always showed tons of upside. He's the kind of guy, he's going later. He's picked 258, so really undrafted or late round flyer. But he's the kind of guy, if he doesn't have any setbacks with injuries, I mean, he has huge upside, and he's shown that time and time again. However, I don't believe he's, I mean, I guess you can never project injuries, but he's never shown an ability to stay healthy. But if he does, he's a guy to keep your eye on if he is on the waiver wire. Because even if he only pitches 100 innings, we'll say, I'll take those 100 quality innings, stream him a few games, but he has a ton of upside if he stays healthy.
Yeah, I mean, Richards is definitely a guy that he could be a really good fantasy pitcher if he were to stay healthy. He's always had something with him. It's always something. I would take him as a sleeper in like the last couple rounds, but I'm not going to reach on him though.
No, for sure. Behind him, they have a couple guys lower in their rotation that have some upside, but listed third, I'm going to glaze over him a little bit. Zach Davies isn't really being drafted. He's listed as their third starter right now. He has a low K rate. I don't think for fantasy purposes he's overly relevant, but do you have any insight on Zach Davies?
I mean, if I'm down in a couple pitching categories on a Sunday, I might pick him up if he has a decent matchup. So that's it.
Yep, I agree. Behind him is Joey Lucchesi and Dinelson Lamet. Both of them, I actually really like them. Lucchesi's going around pick 218 right now, has a ton of K upside. He's got to work on his control a little bit, and that goes for both of them. Lamet, he has elite. When you look at his advanced metrics, everything on Lamet is elite. His velocity, his pitch spin rate, how hard he's hit. His advanced metrics, even though it was a small sample size in 73 innings, they're actually very similar to Walker Buehler, and that was the best comparison that you can give him based on his advanced metrics. So he has that kind of elite upside, and he's going pick 119, and in that spot, he's one of my favorite mid-round guys. If you're able to get a guy, he had 105 Ks too in 73 innings, so his K rate is absolutely phenomenal. He needs to work on his control a little bit. His whip was higher than it should be, but if he's able to hone in on that at all, he could be a steal in that spot.
I agree. I like Lamet a lot. I like both of them. They're both young stud potential pitchers that could really be great for fantasy purposes, but I think for them, you just got to keep up it and not really show any signs of going through slumps or anything, and I think they should be fine. I'd definitely take both of them at their ADPs.
Yeah, no, and I thought it was interesting. They have another guy listed as kind of their sixth guy, Drew Pomeranz, who has had a very up and down career and been with a few organizations now. But interesting to me, he's going approximately seven picks after Lucchesi right now, which is very interesting to me. I mean, Pomeranz has always had a high K rate, but he's also had an ERA that's usually in the high fours. So to me, I'm leaving that on the waiver wire. I mean, he has a high ownership percentage for whatever reason, but I
agree. I'm not taking him. I mean, he's a streamer. That's what he is, in my opinion.
Then their closer this season is going to be Kirby Yates. He's currently going pick 62. So usually the second closer off the board after Hader. We've talked about closers at length, but that's very early for me. Especially, I think the Padres have a solid team, but he'll have opportunities, but not as many. They won't be one of the better teams in the league. I think they'll be a solid organization, a solid team overall. Maybe 85 wins or so. So he'll have opportunities, but that's just too high for a closer for me.
It is. It's too high. And we talk about time and time again, it's the closers and if it's saves and holds. But, I mean, I'm not taking any closer in the top 100 picks. That's just me.
Yep, I agree with you. Then we'll finish it off here. We'll talk about a few of their impact prospects. The Padres, I think, long-term are a very interesting organization. You see they have a ton of young talent in the rotation between Tatis. They have Machado there. They have a lot of young players with a ton of upside. And their farm system right now is ranked second in the majors. So they have some other guys that are going to be coming through soon. So they're an interesting organization over the next few years. I'll start off talking about Mackenzie Gore, who's one of the top prospects in all of baseball. I know a lot of people that love Mackenzie Gore. And I've said it a few times, I don't trust prospects until they perform at the AA level. And that's the only thing that concerns me about Mackenzie Gore last year. He actually kind of struggled once he got to AA last year. He had a 4.15 ERA. He has elite K upside, but he struggled with his control a little bit when he got to AA. And I'm interested to see if that shakes his confidence and if he returns to AA this year to see how he performs. But that always makes me nervous, and I've talked about it a few times, but he's still a good dynasty stash. But to me, and we talked about Profar not performing up to expectations over the course of his career, if you're in a dynasty league, I personally like to sell high on those guys. And I understand that Franco could be a star for years to come, but there's also a chance that he's not going to be much of anything. And that's a reality of a prospect. So I like to sell high, especially if you have somebody that's obsessed with Mackenzie Gore and they're willing to offer you a nice deal. I like to sell prospects.
I do too. I'm actually a Gore believer. So if you draft prospects, like if you do like a regular draft and if you're in a dynasty draft, I'd keep them. And if you do your prospect drafts, Gore's going to be something special, I think. I think once he got to AA, I think he had a little bit of the jitters a little bit. So I think after a couple of years in the minors, he might rise up to the occasion. I like him a lot better than Casey Mize. And I'll say this, out of all the pitching prospects out there, I think Gore has the most upside. I think it's the question if he can live up to it.
Yeah. And he definitely does. And I'll be interested to see if they try to rush him through. There's been some rumors out there that they're going to try to get him up in the majors this season. I think that he needs a little more seasoning, and that would really hurt him long term, but we'll see how they handle that. A few other guys that they have, Luis Patino, he's in AA right now, probably won't make his debut. Taylor Trammell, who you might see in the majors, especially that third, fourth outfielder spot. They don't have anybody that really has a lock on it. He's a super athletic guy. He's going to steal a ton of bases. I'm not overly high on him. He's one of those guys that I think people get obsessed with, oh man, he's so athletic, but that doesn't always translate to being a good baseball player. And that's the reality to me. He's always had a really low average. He has good strike zone discipline, but low average, very fast guy, very good defensively. But I'm not sold on him from a fantasy perspective. And, I could be wrong. He has potential, but I think he's going to be a better real life player.
Same here. I agree about Trammell. He's very athletic, like you said, but he's going to be more of a defensive outfielder than a hitting outfielder, I think.
And the last two guys I'll make quick notes on. Adrian Moore, he struggled in the majors. He's got the opportunity at the end of last season, had a very high ERA, very high whip. Looks like he might start in the bullpen this year, and they might look to transition him if they have any injuries in the rotation. Same with Michael Baez. He came up last year. They put him in the bullpen. He was strictly a starter in the minors. He had a 3.03 ERA in 23 bullpen appearances, so it looks like he's going to settle into that role. But I don't really have any other notes on any of the prospects or the Padres. So anything you want to throw in or add, Rydawg?
I like Moran a lot. I think the stints in the major leagues, if you're only pitching 40 to 50 innings, only a major league play, I think there's still room to work. As far as Moran goes, we'll see. You have to see what happens. Yeah, they have a lot of talented prospects and young players. So this is going to be a team that I like, and I'm looking forward to seeing in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, because a lot of those prospects are ready to graduate too, so that's why they're more interesting. We're not talking about, I know the San Francisco Giants have a good farm system, but a lot of those guys are 3+ years away from playing, so a lot can happen. But the Padres, a lot of those guys are double and AAA right now.
Yeah, they're all ready to go, so it's going to be interesting how it plays out. Maybe they trade a couple of them for a elite ace or something, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's all we have on the Padres today, so thanks for tuning in. This has been another episode of Doc and Dog. Make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Holics YouTube channel. Check us out at the Fantasy Holics Facebook and on Twitter at Fantasy Holics1, and we will see you guys next time.
Peace out.